Hey Tom Sox fans, welcome back to another Tom Sox Conversations. I'm Maddie McNamee, here today with 2015 Tom Sox player and current UVA assistant softball coach, Jake Sidwell. Thanks for being here today with us, Jake. How are you doing?
Good. Appreciate you having me.
Yeah, of course. All right. So we've just got a few questions for you here today. So I guess my first one is, how have you kind of been staying busy with baseball and sports right now when there's not really anything going on?
In terms of staying entertained?
Yeah, or anything really.
Yeah, catching up on Netflix for sure.
Yeah.
I think I'm watching The Office for a third time through.
Nice.
But honestly, we've been trying to get creative with, putting together structures for the year and just, crossing our fingers. Hopefully everything's same as always when we get back in the fall-ish, normal as it can be. So until we're told otherwise, we're kind of approaching it that way. And, a lot of staff meetings to try and really make next year as good as we can. And we're doing some virtual recruiting, which is different, watching games online instead of in person, which is what we'd usually be doing over the summer. But other than that, downtime, watching a whole lot of Netflix, and I finally caved and downloaded TikTok. And our players make fun of me, but
It'll keep you busy for sure. I also caved and have been on that too frequently. But
yeah, it definitely keeps you busy and entertained.
so I guess going back then to Tom Sox stuff. So you were on the team in 2015, as I previously said, which was actually the team's first year being a team. So did you have any sort of expectation for that summer, or like the league in general going into that?
Well, I knew the Valley League was always a pretty good league, pretty historically. Actually, my dad coached in the Valley League way back in '92 for Waynesboro.
Cool.
So I knew it was a good league. Didn't know really anything about Charlottesville. Our head coach that summer was a senior when I was a freshman, Mike Goldberg, at Davidson. So I actually played with him for a year. And we had a couple Davidson guys go out there and all play together. So I really didn't know what to expect. I knew I had played summer ball the year before down in Florida, and there was rain delays every single day. And hoping that we'd have less of that, which we did a little bit. But really just out there to get reps and try to compete with a different group of guys.
So what would you say was your favorite memory then, being on the Tom Sox?
Ooh. Well, aside from Mike Goldberg getting ejected a couple times, which was great.
Oh, man.
Yeah, he's going to be mad that I said that. But I don't know that I could pinpoint a specific memory. I think anytime you bring a group of guys together that don't know each other for 2-3 months and they just mesh, we had a pretty solid core group. We had a few guys come in and out based on, a couple injuries and pitching inning limits and things like that. But the core group of us really got pretty tight over that 2-3 month span. So I would say really just the relationships and guys that I've kept in touch with even now, which 2015 sounds like so long ago, but there are definitely guys on that team that I still talk to now.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like that's always a pretty common trend of the guys getting really close. I think that's the most common answer I've gotten when I ask that question is the bonds and stuff. But so what would you say that you took away from that summer, going back into Davidson the next season? What was your biggest takeaway from the summer?
Personally, it was a huge summer for development for me. So the year before was a rough year offensively for me, individually. And I knew that the following year, my junior year, was going to have to step it up results-wise from an offensive standpoint, as well as kind of taking a leadership role a little bit more, being an upperclassman. And so I think the development on both ends of that were huge in that summer for sure. I think it was right about the middle of that summer is when I started trying kind of figuring it out offensively and carried into, fortunately had a pretty good year the next year at Davidson. And I think really just the development from a personal standpoint was the biggest takeaway for me.
So then, in 2017, then you advanced to the Super Regionals with Davidson, and you were one of the best catchers in the nation, being a Gold Glove finalist. So what was that whole experience like?
That was surreal. I don't think we knew really what to do when we just kept winning. we knew we barely got into the conference tournament. We knew that it's cliche, but we're playing with house money. And we were just, honestly, that group of guys was the closest group that I've been around. And we just kind of were enjoying every day that we got to play together because we knew it was going to end soon. And then it just kept going and kept going. And, just extended into the Super Regional, which unfortunately fell short of Omaha, just 2 games. But, I think it was just, everyone was just trying to take it in as it was happening. And then you don't really realize how crazy it is until after the fact. Mm-hmm. And so I think looking back now, it's definitely a time that you can appreciate. And I think it's obviously a huge talking point for all the alum that were on that team and all the alumni that were before us that kind of set that standard ahead of time and kind of helped make that happen. And I think that's a huge connector with all of us for sure to this day. But yeah, in the time, we didn't even really think about it of how big a deal it was.
So then you went from playing right into coaching baseball. So how did you bridge, from playing to coaching? How did you adjust to that?
Well, I think like being a grad assistant at VCU, my mm-hmm. first year out, a lot of it was just taking in information and trying to learn. Mm-hmm. It was Sean Stifler over at VCU, who's one of the best mid-major head coaches around. And, I was trying to take in everything I could from him and that staff for sure. Less of, the teaching and coaching side of things and trying to take in as much information as well as the following year at George Washington with Greg Ritchie at the helm, and just trying to be a sponge as much as I could. And whenever the opportunity came up when I was allowed to coach and able to jump in, then I'd be ready for it. So I think going from a leadership standpoint as a player to kind of that sit back and listen role was probably the biggest transition. But definitely better for it for the people that I was around for sure.
So then what did you take away from your playing days to help you with coaching, I guess? And like, what helped you get there?
Yeah, I think the catching position itself, for sure, having to, deal with the prima donnas that are pitchers and work with them and, get to know each guy differently and what helps them tick and what, how to manage the pitchers from behind the dish was definitely, I think that's a special position in terms of, I think that's why you see so many catchers go into coaching. Mm-hmm. So many coaches were catchers when they played. So from a management standpoint, I think that's kind of where it started. Pretty young. Coach Cook down at Davidson, by my senior year, pretty much let me call my own games. And, the management side was a huge, huge piece of it, and which was lucky for me because I didn't have to hit as well as everybody else and I still got to play. So nice. I think from the actual tactical standpoint, that was a huge bonus for me.
So now you're coaching softball. So what was the transition like from baseball to softball? Because obviously, the game is very similar, but also the mechanics can be really different. So what was that like transitioning?
For sure. Hitting's hitting, which it's a good thing I'm not a pitching coach because that has been the biggest area of growth for me is, they got a rise ball and a drop ball. That thing goes 2 different directions. I think it's crazy. So I think the pitching side and then just the pace of the game is so much faster. And I think that's probably the biggest transition in terms of the game. Coaching itself honestly was a lot more similar than I expected. Going from baseball to softball, just coaching hitting was very similar. I think the more drastic change for me was going from a volunteer assistant in charge of 3 catchers to a hitting coach at a Power 5 who's also the recruiting coordinator. Baseball or softball, it was baptized by fire a little bit. So I think that was probably a more drastic change than going from baseball to softball itself.
And then, so now you're back in Charlottesville because you're working for UVA. So how would you compare, your experiences from 2015 up until now in 2020?
I think I've seen Charlottesville a little more now, which is, obviously an awesome place. I think when I was playing summer ball here, we were kind of in our little bubble. You wake up, eat breakfast, you go work out, I remember Drew Scott, who was playing at Yale. Me and him would get up, go work out, then go to Raising Cane's, eat lunch, then go out to the field and play a game, which after a Caniac combo from Raising Cane's, I could never go play a game now. But that's what we did. So I think that was kind of our routine every day and didn't really get out much into Charlottesville. But I think that's probably the biggest difference is being able to get out, especially, kind of now in quarantine, half quarantine, getting out, going see, go hiking and go see the city of Charlottesville itself. And obviously they love their Who's. So it's a very cool place.
Awesome. That's all I really have. But thank you so much for talking with me today. I really enjoyed our conversation for Tom Sox Conversations. But that's it. Make sure everyone to follow us on all of our social media on Twitter and on Instagram and to like our Facebook. Also make sure to follow the Valley League. And I'm Maddie McNamee. And this is Tom Sox TV.